Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what we have for you this time. Hibs hop above Hearts in the table. McTominay and McKenna pick up big wins abroad. And 30 years on, we've got to have Raith. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who is listening to this podcast. Welcome to this Scottish Football Show, another episode of Stuff with Balls in It and our voices. I am Andrew Slaven, your host, to take you through it all, and I am joined by the wonderful senior producer at TNT Sports, Laura Brannan, and head creative at Melbourne City, Findlay Marks. What's been busy for you, Finn, in the future of Australia?
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. My boss was away last week in Manchester in
Oh,
the
really?
hub of the CFG. Yep, with all the other clubs.
Is
So
he off to try and change the things around for City? How bad
no,
things are.
no, it's just something that they do every now and again. But yeah, I've kind of been covering it. Was a long week last week. Double match day on Saturday. Both our men and women playing on the same day, just a few hours apart. Which never seems to be a problem at Amy Park, but frequently turns Hampden into a paddy field if there's more than one match played there within about 6 weeks of each other. So that's always
Nice.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
realize I've just realized that I'm glowing uh in this little chat that we've got. I'm glowing because it is the 1st of December, but I actually have my tree up already. If you can actually
Oh,
see it. Hey!
Oh,
It's pretty,
look
isn't
at
it?
that.
Yeah, Merry
we,
Christmas.
we put our tree up this weekend as well. Have you got yours up yet, Laura?
No, I just don't have enough time in my life to do that on the first weekend of December, as much as I'd love to. I'm all for it. It's officially Christmas time now. We're into December, so I'm very
Yes.
excited. Do you know what? Right, I've got a slight point here, right? I've seen a lot of Christmas trees on Instagram stories over the course of this weekend. Okay, great, all for it, lovely. What I don't understand though is how many people seem to have wrapped presents under their trees
Nah, they're fake.
already.
No way. No one's organised and has their presents ready on the 1st of December. They're aliens.
Who has the time to not just buy the presents? No, sorry, plan the presents, buy the presents, get them delivered, buy the wrapping paper, wrap the presents, even put the tags on the presents.
No, that's not
Who
right.
are these people that have that amount of time in their life to be that sorted the first weekend in December?
That's too much.
Madness.
Can I also ask as well where we stand? Because I feel like this is an important issue, and we're all about tackling the important issues. Where do you stand on like getting into the Christmas festivities before December starts? Because I feel very strongly and staunchly that 1st of December, go for your life. Anything before that is unnecessary, and it shouldn't be happening. Because some people are like, right, bonfire night's out the way, 6th of November, right, we can focus on Christmas now. That's far too early.
No,
That is ridiculous.
no, that's a joke. It's always been my mum's birthday's the 29th of November. So in my family, we've just been brought up to as soon as her birthday's out the way, it's Christmas.
That's exactly like my missus, Emily. It's her birthday on the 26th of November. So the tree went up on the 26th. It always
There we
does.
go.
So I've just
On,
had to
on her
put up with
actual
that.
birthday.
Yeah.
So our tree goes up on her birthday.
Yeah.
Ah, so she shares her birthday with the first day of Christmas.
She, yes, she is Christmas. She'll enjoy listening to that. Yeah. The one thing that is good about Christmas is the amount of fucking football that we get to see as well. It all kind of folds into one where you forget what day it is. You just know it's December. You just know it's Christmas time. You don't know what date or whatever.
I used to love working on New Year's Day at games. People think that's mad, but I'm like, oh,
Really?
just it feels special at Christmas time, even when you're working
Hmm.
it. Whether you're in the stand or you're working it, it's just a special buzz about the place.
People who won't know this, but as we all work in the industry, you tend we will all be working on like Boxing Day and New Year's Day. Like that is a common thing. Like we will always be working when the average punter is in the pub, like slurping down a gorgeous pint. Or like just enjoying some like Christmas sandwiches, leftover sandwiches or whatever, or pieces, I should say. We're actually out there hungover, but still working on the games. It's mad, really, isn't it?
We never stop.
It
We
is.
never
It is.
stop.
But I'm with you, by the way, Laura. There is a magic to football over that kind of Christmas New Year period that is just different from any other time of the year. I would die on the hill that, like, see, even if you're like back home or you go to a random game or something like that. I remember years ago when my folks were living over kind of like Kelty way, we were going to see Cowdenbeath during that, and it was like a rank rotten game, freezing cold, like just absolutely rubbish. But I was like, this is probably the best 0-0 draw I will ever see Cowdenbeath play in because it's Christmas. Like it's just there's a joy and a festivity to that time of year that would be better than any other 0-0 draw watching Cowdenbeath play. So
I guess. Sounds horrible. Right, let's get into some meat on the bones of this podcast because Laura, we tend to get some industry questions. Well, we've always been getting industry questions, and we definitely don't make them up. So, has any of them came to the front of our minds recently that you can tell us about? You've been very busy, haven't you? So, I don't know if you've seen many questions.
Yeah,
I haven't.
one actually came to mind. It was when your friend actually asked you something, and
I
you
don't have
asked
friends.
you asked in the group chat for help, and I genuinely thought it was just an industry question. I was like, "Oh, that's quite a good one, actually. Let's save that for next week." And you're like, "No, he actually wants help right now." I was like, "Oh, okay then." For me, and my everyday work is like dealing with highlights and turnaround highlights. And certain people, I don't realize like the detail that goes into it, like how they actually get from like the live TV to being highlights.
Mm,
The likes of BBC, STV, even TNT in my job, they'll be coming from like a SAT truck that feeds the games through live into a kind of online server. And then the editors will pick it up from there and cut it. And it's kind of my role to oversee all that. I don't want to bore you all the technicalities, but it's down to the editors to then pick out the key moments and get all that down to five minutes we're talking.
hmm
And then even nowadays in the world of social, we're now cutting 9 by 16 reels, which is a
Oh,
whole
I hate it.
that noise is exactly how I feel. And I think how every editor feels as well, because football
Because you're
should
cutting
not
it
be
for
watched
phones.
upright. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's probably something that like the average fan doesn't think about. They scroll through their phone, they see a goal going in, they see highlights after a Champions League game or whatever. They don't think twice about it because it's on their phone and that they're just used to it now. They don't turn our phones anymore.
It's the what gets me is when clearly like the action's out of frame, so you've had to like motion blur it, and it does that weird kind of like move, and it is, oh man, I hate it. But you're right though, like everyone at home, anyone who watches their phone don't care, but there are people on the other side of that going, I want to shoot myself.
If you see the motion blur like that, that's a sign of a bad edit because that's
yeah.
keyframing done wrong.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna put my career on the neck. The editors might hate me, but I will say this now. If you are an editor and you are using the glow function on like Avid or Premiere or whatever like that, that is 90s. That is the 90s. We don't live there anymore.
yeah.
Stop putting glow on your closers or your openers. Those little 30-second montages that get you into stuff. Stop using glow. It's old. Sorry, Laura, continue.
It's no, it's more just bad keyframing. It's the bane of my life when
Oh yeah.
the ball isn't followed properly. And
It's
this is
just
the little things that people don't realize is actually very stressful.
it is that thing. It's the bane of my life, honestly, is reformatting stuff that was filmed what we would say like panoramic or widescreen. So, but we would in the industry say 16:9. So the way that your telly is, so it's wider at the bottom than it is tall, right? That's the framing that everything's filmed in, and it's what we predominantly edit in. And then to turn it 90 degrees, so you're filming it in the aspect ratio for a phone, is the bane of my life because everything you make, then you have to cut that way too. And it's just an extra level of editing where you normally have to push in on footage and, like you say, track movement of the ball because it doesn't work. The thing is, like, not to sound too old man shouting at a cloud, but I'm like, how difficult is it to tip your phone to watch it properly? Because the thing's like, if I'm watching highlights on YouTube, if I had the option between watching a reel or YouTube highlights, I'll always watch YouTube, even on my phone, because I want to see as much of the pitch and the build up as possible. I don't want to just imagine what's going on. Also, when you're watching it live, you wouldn't consider watching it up and down the way on your phone. You just wouldn't. You wouldn't walk into a pub and totally accept seeing a TV at a 90-degree angle on the wall. You're like, why are you showing it that way? I want to see as much as possible. So what's the problem with watching content and highlights that way?
But
Does
the
my
weird thing
box
is,
in, by the way.
and I'm not
Well,
going to go into too much detail on like numbers, but at least at TNT, we've got the hard numbers there to suggest that people love watching it in upright, like on TikTok, on Instagram. It does so well. Um, and it's our habits, isn't it? It's because we sit there and
Yeah.
oh,
we scroll, and
totally.
it's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
it's pure laziness that we're just going to go, oh, well, it's there. I'm going to watch it
Hmm.
rather than actually consuming it in the actual way that it's meant to be consumed.
It's like my mum used to turn around and say, like, I hate TV when it's got like there's a thing called depth of field and lots of cameras if they've got like really clear in focus the person that you're seeing on TV, but the background's really blurry and it looks when you're in TV, it looks really pretty and it looks really nice. But for people in their like 60s to 80s, they might be like, I feel like my eyes are funny. Like I feel like my eyes are going. Like what's that? Why is it filmed like that? But it's just style. It's just a style thing. So when it comes to things that we might think is that's a really cool idea, someone's going to be fucked off somewhere.
Can I put in just my other bugbear? Well, we're talking specifically about highlights and the way that a lot of highlights are done. And I get the thing of like, for a lot of highlights, you want to get them out, not of your Scottish football, but broadly, people want to get them out as quick as possible, right? So that you are capitalizing on your own product, that not everybody's seeing it from some random guy filming it on their TV at home and then posting that on Twitter or whatever. But the thing that really annoys me most is bad sound design or editing in highlights. This is something I've found, just calling people out on this. Premier Sports specialize in this, which is whenever there's like highlights of a Scotland game or League Cup games or whatever, the amount of times there's a hard cut in the audio between where the picture is rather than letting the sound maybe finish underneath the start of the next clip does my absolute box in. So you would have like Michael Stewart or someone summarizing at the end of a thing, being like, it's just absolutely brilliant the way that he's come through there and he's managed to get the touch on the and now Hart's on the attack again. And I'm like, no, just let him either cut the line early or finish it or put a fade or something like a little bit of finesse.
One thing that could be there are automated systems out there that cut highlights.
That is actually
AI
true.
highlights and
There's
stuff.
Do you know what?
yeah,
That
so
is
AI
actually true.
highlights exist.
I used to cut highlights at West Ham when I worked there, and just before I left, they brought in AI to cut them, and that was exactly the point I made. Was it was cutting off the commentary, and I said you need to have somebody to blend the audio and fix where they cut it off because the commentary doesn't always match in time with what we're watching. You need a human brain to process that,
Yeah.
and the attitude was just, oh well, AI is quicker. And that is
Yeah.
exactly that's the kind of future we're in for, basically.
Well, it's just laziness. Ultimately, there's a lot of laziness that's fallen into a lot of places of work, and it saves money. It's not just laziness; it saves money. It saves manpower. But that's when you end up seeing poorer quality things because there's no care and attention. There's no one putting the love and soul into something.
I mean, we are three old men shouting at clouds right now, but I feel it all. Every single thing you're saying, I feel it.
You're not an old man.
I'm the oldest man out of all of you.
You're...
Shit, that's true.
Okay, well, we're still having a laugh, so let's move on to our funnies.
Can I just jump in as well? Like while we're maybe just on a soapbox, on our high horses, whatever you want to say, talking about things in the industry that might kind of do us. I really don't like having a go at people, especially people maybe that are just starting out in the industry. Like, because we've all got to start somewhere and we all have to learn lessons and do stuff. But did any of you see the Sofascore guy at the Celtic press conference?
Yes.
I've
Yes.
I've genuinely not had that much secondhand embarrassment. I don't think in
Oh,
like 4 or 5 years. I was dying on my feet for the boy, trying to. I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to use statistics as the base for an interesting alternative question. And fair play, trying not to go down the. So do you think it'll be a tough match kind of route, like bargain basement basic bitch kind of questions in a press conference? I was like, there's a way to do it, mate, and you just need to learn how to be curt when you're doing these things. I know it's kind of a running joke maybe between the three of us that like when we have guests on, I sometimes take too long to ask questions to our guests, but I'm like
Yes, you
the
do.
forum's I do, but the forum's slightly different because you want to try and give context and show that you've understood a subject and you want to tee someone up for an interesting answer, hopefully. But in a press conference, it's just like two sentences top, get your point across and let the manager speak. It's not about you.
Normally, like at this point, we would play the clip, right? And I'm not going to do that because I don't, it's, you're right, it's not
No,
nice. This is a
yeah, it's
young
not.
boy who's just clearly, he's fresh, he's quite raw to the industry. I don't know who it is actually. I don't want anyone to know. I don't want his name to get out there so he becomes known as this because that's not what
Mm.
we're not laughing at him.
Are
It's
you
more
the
just,
Sofascore guy?
but for anyone who didn't hear it, and as I say, we're not going to play it back. Anyone who didn't hear it for context. This was, I think it was the pre-match press conference before the Club Brugge game, before
Yeah.
the Champions League match.
That's right. Yeah.
And he did ask Brendan Rodgers a very long and windy question, but threw in so many stats, fell over the stats quite a lot, named quite silly stats that didn't really mean much. And it just became this long and winded question that nobody really knew where it was going. And I don't think Brendan Rodgers knew where it was going.
He just
It,
kept
it was just
smiling, didn't he?
very awkward to listen to because you're like, right, okay, where's this going? Wrap it up, come on. Do you know what really annoyed me though was Brendan Rodgers, his reaction was like a one-word answer. And yes, it was quite funny, but at the same time, it was like, that's quite condescending as well. You could have handled that a little bit better.
In his defense, the question itself was a closed question. It was a
Yeah,
yes or no
wasn't
answer
it?
that was required. And he
Yeah.
did just say, like, is that what needs to happen?
And he said, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, but then I feel like he could have at
It's
least
just,
pandered to him a little bit and developed the answer after the initial jokey response. So I thought it was a little bit harsh,
ah.
unless he did, and it's just been misconstrued when it went round like social during the week. But it was just a little bit awkward, wasn't it?
Oh man, yeah, it's hard. I've done it. Well, I've not done it. I'm a great interviewer. But a lot of the times what I don't like is when interviewers they try to be matey. They try to be
Oh
like your
yes,
friend and try to be
mm,
like, oh well, that was amazing from them, wasn't it? How good have they been? So, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it's just too nice. Like, not a lot of people want to ask the difficult
yeah.
questions. So, I
You
mean, it's a long way, and there's loads of great reporters out there.
I think the thing is as well. Just to come back to that point, I don't think I made particularly well about context. Like, there's a time and a place for the slightly more chummier type thing. Maybe if you're doing like a feature piece tracks, training or something like that, or pre-match, or even I would say like post-match interview, because you want to get them very quickly on board, and maybe if something good's happened, you want to talk that up positively. But like a post-match interview is different from a pre-match presser, is different from a content piece that you're filming outside of a match day run-of-the-mill stuff or whatever. Like there is nuance and context to how you should be interacting. So to be
Mhm.
too chummy in a press conference doesn't really work, or to be too ostentatious or confrontational in a post-match doesn't really work. Like there are different settings where it's supposed to be better. And I guess people, maybe not everybody knows that, but that's part of something special. If you're young, it's good to learn, I guess, relatively quickly at the start of your career.
Other things that have happened. Did you see Tony Watt posted up a picture of his brand new boots that he got? It's like like bright white. I don't even know what brand they are, but someone has absolutely murdered them on social media. Speckenbauer or Franz HMFC says boys ordered Fitbit boots from the Chippy because they're like wrapped in proper Chippy paper as well, and
in a
what
chippy
looks like
box.
a Pyrex box. Yeah,
The
it's
little
abs-
the little white clasped box that you get at the chippy. Yeah, it's
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
that.
It's amazing. I love it. That's what chip brands like Chippies should come out and start stylizing their own boots now. Why not?
That'd be class.
Blue Lagoon boots. How about that?
John McGinn would be a fan of them, wouldn't he? He was it
Yeah,
was it after one of the
got a pair
Scotland
of new
games he was
Blue
playing in the
Lagoons the
Blue
other
Lagoon?
day.
That's it. Salt and sauce, the Blue Lagoon boot. That'd be
Oh,
quality.
that's class. Oh, that's a good thing. Sponsored by Blue Lagoon. Wouldn't that be nice to have a sponsor, eh?
This one wasn't Scottish football, but I wanted to point out because this feels like it is the most Scottish football thing that would ever happen. It was in Brazil. So their title
Oh, it's just like
decider,
Scotland then.
just down the
Yeah.
road. They had their title decider, and the fans inside the stadium at one end of the ground couldn't actually see the pitch because they'd already built a stand, a stage for a gig that was happening after the game, like a couple of days
No
later.
way.
So it was already built in this end. Can you imagine this, right? So Taylor Swift is coming to Hampden, and then the whole West End can't see the game because the stage is already set. And they put up the screen, they put a screen up on the stage so you could watch the game that was happening behind it. This is this would
That's
absolutely happen at Hampden. It just absolutely would.
I think I I did because I did see this, and I think I read somewhere around it. So basically, the reason that this happened, and it's actually this is something that's unusual to British football fans, but it's quite common outside of the UK or outside of Europe, certainly in football, which is a lot of clubs don't own their own football stadium. Like it's not their space. It either belongs to an agency or the council or something else. So the stadium that Melbourne City play in, Amy Park, is played at by four different sports teams,
Mm.
two rugby teams and two football teams, as well as being used for concerts. And we were kicked out recently. So we had like when the fixtures get announced, the reason that we did so many away games back to back and had a bye week because there's an odd number of teams in the league this year was that there were monster trucks on Amy Park. There was a last season as well. We weren't allowed to play at home for 3 weeks, and we had to move an Asian Champions League game because the Foo Fighters were playing when we would have been
Oh
playing our
no.
Asian Champions League game, but that had been in the calendar for months. So it's like, well, now football, you have to go and do find somewhere else to play. But I think this is what happens. But they booked in the gig, and then they were like, oh, yeah, there's a football match, right? So we need to find a workaround. But you're like, it's just so, that feels so Scottish football, that going on. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I suppose there's lots of things that might happen outside of Scottish football that feels very Scottish football, but we did have a classic moment down in the championship. Did you see that the Livingston bus broke down
No, 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 no,
somewhere?
no. Well,
I don't know.
literally it was a Livingston bus. It wasn't the
It
Livingston
was.
team that was on the bus though.
Well,
Oh,
yes,
this
very
is this
true.
is so beautifully Scottish football. Um,
Exactly.
Basically, Livingston loaned their bus out to Broxburn, who were playing Stranraer in the Scottish Cup. On their way down to Stranraer, they broke down. So then they had to switch buses with a supporters bus that was going past and take that to the game instead. So basically, Broxburn fans turned up at their game in Livingston's official bus.
Yeah.
Love it.
Weird, isn't it? Weird and wonderful. That is where we want to be every weekend, please. Right, on to some news though. Laura, there's a massive change ahead of the World Cup draw, which is just around the corner, a couple of days away. This week, isn't it?
Draw itself is next week. It's on
Right.
Friday, the 13th of
Oh,
December.
great.
Yeah, great. It's going to go well, isn't it? Um, there has been a change to FIFA rules, if you want to call it that. It's not as big as the headlines are making out.
Oh, this is
Basically,
exciting, isn't it?
and I'm not going to go into technical details because even I can't be bothered reading up on it. It's basically Scotland we're guaranteed to get a 14 group for the qualifiers next year and start in September. They are now not guaranteed to get a 14 group. They are now there's a possibility of getting in a 5-team group. You don't really need to know the ins and outs of why that is, but if we get in a 5-team group, it means we have drawn either Switzerland or England.
Ah,
So
cool.
yeah. Yeah, because they are not involved in the Nations League. That's the long and short of it. It's not that exciting. I don't know. Do any of us want England again? I don't.
Who are they anyway? I can't remember playing them again.
They're pish anyway, because they've been in League B of the Nations League and Greece pumped them recently. So nothing to worry about. I think they'll be absolutely fine.
We're going to play Greece though, aren't we? We play Greece in March, next March, don't we? For the that's the stay in League A. Is
Yes.
it, Laura? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it
to
is.
stay in
Yes.
League A, which we explained in previous podcasts that it's actually quite a good thing to be in League A, especially when it's a World Cup year. Am I right?
You've been listening. I've trained you well.
Sometimes. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you can go back and listen to that one. It's a very good listen. Scotland players over the week have been absolutely smashing it. Scott McTominay scored the only goal in Napoli's win against Torino on Sunday. That means that they're still top of the Serie A and everyone's
So
still
good.
making pizzas in McTominay's honour. Uh, he's overshadowing Billy Gilmore a little bit, who's still been pretty good actually,
Yeah.
mostly bench appearances and stuff like that. But even not just in Italy, guys, in Spain, Las Palmas beat Barcelona, the the leaders in Spain. But who is shoring things up at the back, Finn? You're nodding your head.
Well, that would be Scott McKenna, who, by all accounts, was absolutely magnificent. Just an absolute rocket at the back for Las Palmas. It was Sid Lowe, who's very well known
Don't
English
know.
but Spanish-based journalist writing about La Liga, and he was the one that called it out. He was just like McKenna was absolutely immense.
Never heard those words in the same sentence.
Well, I know that you've not been a massive fan of Scott McKenna, and whenever he makes an appearance for Scotland, Laura's like, oh God, here we go. But to be honest, when your option is Grant Hanley or a man that's played in the Premier League and very well for the most part for Nottingham Forest, has also done a stint in Denmark. I think he was playing for Copenhagen on loan
Copenhagen.
and actually did really well there while they were playing in Europe as well. Now he's gone to Spain and he's doing really well in La Liga. Even though like Las Palmas aren't having a great season, but he's been pretty solid through it for them at the back. And obviously, you can't be shite and win 2-1 at the new camp to a Barcelona that are top of the league. So, yeah, I just think I would love to see him getting an odd ahead of Grant Hanley, who's not even really playing that much for Norwich in the Championship this season.
That's fair. I mean, what we certainly know is in hot countries, you need a robust fridge freezer in your arsenal. Um, an interesting twist on that: the winner was scored by the ex-Rangers man Fabio Silva.
Yeah,
So
managed to stay on
it,
his feet, which was nice for the boy. So fair
it's
play.
weird.
Well done.
It's weird how you can be like a really good player, but you can't really do it in Scottish football.
Well, he's not the first, and he definitely won't be the last. A different type of football we play here. It's very different, and I think if you're young and haven't been used to the pace of it and the physicality of it, it can be a bit of a shock to the system. So yeah,
Lewis Ferguson's back as well. He's now well back from that huge injury that put him out for most of last season. It's 3 games he's been involved in now, and he made his first start actually in the Champions League on Wednesday when they played Lille. They did lose 2-1, but I mean, this is a guy who surely has to be really kind of being the first name on the list if I'm honest, guys. I mean, he's went over to Italy and absolutely bossed it for Bologna.
First name on the list. What list?
Yeah,
Team sheet.
yeah.
Your first name on the Scotland team sheet. Sorry.
That's why I'm not the Scotland manager.
Exactly. Who are you dropping for him?
Kenny McLean.
different types of players, different
Yeah,
players for different.
yeah,
I think.
does he play that?
Kenny McLean, as much as he's been class for Scotland, he's like on the playing fields of the school playground. He's like the last kid that you pick in the Scotland team.
I think that's a bit harsh.
Yeah, that's
Really?
very
Solid.
harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's solid in the midfield, but
You
it's
think it's
different though.
harsh?
Ken McLean plays in a defensive midfield position, and Lewis Ferguson plays an attacking midfield position. So,
That's not my point, though. My point
so
is he would
you're just
be
gonna
ahead of him.
shoehorn him in.
No, my point is you would pick Lewis Ferguson first. You would say he's definitely playing before you would say Kenny McLean's definitely playing.
Okay, but which attacking midfielder are you taking out for him?
I don't know. John Carver has left Scotland, but he's still going to be hanging around.
Basically, John Carver had a class time in Warsaw a couple of weeks back, and I got a job out of it.
Yeah.
No, I think it's actually he's I think this
Can
is
you
a
say the
nice
team name, Laura?
Lesia Gdansk. It's all good.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So basically,
Excuse
he's
me.
taking this managerial role till the end of the season. And he will still be available for our games in March. Don't know what that means, June onwards, but the technical director at Gdansk is Kevin Blackwell, who
Mhm.
he knows from his time at Leeds. So I think this is just, I need some
Jobs
help.
for the
Come on
boys.
in. Yeah. Help me out to the end of the
But it's
season and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's not a permanent appointment, right? It's just a kind of like caretaker role to the end of the season. So really, he's got one international break in there. So I don't think it would, and obviously that's when club football stops. So he's kind of just
Yeah.
gone from one job to another. He's not like missing out on important league games or whatever. So I think it's class. I like John Carver. I think he's
So
an
do I.
absolute weapon, but in the best possible way. I think he's a kid. He's a good lad. I think
He's
he's
a
a
good
good
lad.
person to have in the setup. Yeah.
Just to end this section, we have to mention that it's where were you? Let me ask it this way, Finn. Where were you 30 years ago on this day when we're recording this podcast?
On
Not
this
quite on
day,
this day, but
4 days
I
ago.
think it's 30 years since Raith Rovers won the League Cup, which at the time was a huge shock. I think, given that it was Celtic they were playing in the final, but in the subsequent years since, it's an incredible achievement to look back on. You're asking where I was. I've such vivid memories of this match because I was I was out with my mum doing the shopping at Linwood Asda, and it was on. Remember, the one out there was like massive,
Mm.
and there was like a big electronics section at the left-hand side of the store when you walked in. So there was like loads of TVs and CD players and all that, but all the TVs had the League Cup final on because this was back in the era where you didn't need a subscription; it was on console telly, right? So every screen had this on, and you just had like this ring of like predominantly men just kind of standing with the arms crossed. Obviously, the wife's taking them out, and they've kind of what I'm guessing a lot of them weren't Celtic fans, maybe fans of other clubs, because obviously, as we know, has happened in that game, it went to a penalty shootout. The game ended 2-2, and Raith incredibly won a penalty shootout, and Paul McStay, I think, was the Celtic player that missed the crucial kick.
Hmm.
But there was an enormous cheer went up from everybody watching when Paul McStay missed that penalty, and I don't know. It's just absolutely ingrained in my mind. I remember Now 28 was playing on the sound system in Asda at the same time as well. So I think it was Aswad that was a song. Do you remember the song that was like "Come on and shine, shine like a star"? That was playing in the store while McStay missed that penalty. It's just ingrained in my mind. And the kit in that game as well, the Wraith kit is absolutely beautiful. Like still,
Oh,
I
I
think
don't
it
know
was
it.
an old Kelly's one that had like it was like the navy blue, but it had like almost like a spray paint kind of sash, for want of a
Oh
better.
yeah.
And it had Kelly's written on it, and it was just absolutely beautiful kit. It was also the first time I ever remember learning a football chant. It was the first football chant I ever remember was in primary school the next week because most of my friends were Rangers fans, and the chant was "He's green, he's white, his penalties are shite, all mixed day, all mixed day." First ever chant I remember about Scottish football.
Unbelievable! Motherwell win it right at the death! St Johnstone fans not happy in front of me.
McKenna, see that microphone? I got my so far up here, I'll show them I get that out.
Right, let's talk about what's been happening over the weekend. Maybe what's actually coming up. In fact, to be fair, we'll interlope it together. There's some midweek games coming up: Dundee versus Motherwell, Rangers v Kilmarnock and Aberdeen v Celtic, because these were games that were involved. These teams, well, Aberdeen, Celtic, Rangers, Motherwell, they were all involved in the League Cup earlier last month. So these are the catch-up games. But if we look ahead to Dundee and Motherwell, well, let's actually talk about Hibs as well, actually, 'cause I'll just say it like that. I want to talk about Hibs, guys. Their first win in like 10 games, only their second in 15 or so. Like, this is a huge weight of pressure off of David Gray, a man who had already had the vote of confidence, the dreaded vote of confidence that clubs give their managers who inevitably get the sack 3 or 4 weeks down the line. But this is a huge win against a Motherwell team that's actually been doing pretty well this season. But we're rubbish in this one. The nice thing was that fans were singing David Gray's name. Is
You
this?
know that this is what stuck out for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, there's no beating around the bush here. Motherwell weren't good enough. They made Hibs look like a team we haven't seen this season. They completely turned the corner in this game. But what I thought was actually the nice part was the fans singing David Gray's name, because we've
Mhm.
talked about this before. We had Callum Napier on a couple of weeks back from the Edinburgh Reporter, and he was telling us all about the different pressures behind the scenes and how it's not all on David Gray. It's a lot about the board that's taking the heat for things, and it's not about just results this season. It goes far far back, like years, to the decisions the board have been making, and this really nailed that on for me, because the fans will never ever hate David Gray. He's got that legacy at the club and he'll always have that position. But for him to get that kind of vote of confidence at this time will do him so much
Mhm.
mentally and drive him on. So that was quite a nice touch, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Hibs they've not been that far away in matches. They've not looked out of place, and they've had a number of draws where they've conceded late on, and it's just been a bit of a mess. But one thing's for sure, like Hibs fans definitely don't want Malky Mackay in that dugout.
No. I think I mean, there's been so many occasions this season. I think one of the things that David Gray, on more than one occasion, has decried is the ability of Hibs to see out games, because actually quite a few times this season they've taken the front foot, they've started brightly, they've even gone a couple of goals ahead, but they haven't been able to maintain that, and they've either gone on to quite a lot of time draw games or even lose games from winning positions, and that's a real, you just can't do that. I think the game midweek that finished 3-3, you felt maybe Hibs had finally turned a corner, and looking then to what they've did against Motherwell at the weekend, it certainly looks like they might be starting to turn the tide a little bit, because they'd scored, I think it was like in the 92nd minute, they'd managed to pull it back to 2-2. And then you just think, well, here we go. Aberdeen have done it again. 95th minute, I think it was. They went 3-2 in front. But then full credit to Hibs, because just a minute later, they get that equaliser again. 3 goals in injury time. It was a ridiculous game. But for them to be scrapping for that point at home, really important. And then I think, because there's a difference as well of going out and beating Motherwell 1-0, you're like, great, we've got that victory. To do it by a margin of 3-0, you're like, that's good. That sends more of a statement, I think. The real challenge to Hibs is, and they've got the players to do it.
Oh
I think
yeah.
Gray's been there and done this as well as a player. There's nobody else better in the dugout with the history of going through this stuff with Hibs, where there's been difficult seasons in the past, to guide them through that. But the challenge is to find a level of consistency to put a bit of daylight between them and the other teams that are really struggling at the wrong end of the table.
Yeah, they have some tough games again. It's not hard when you're battling at the bottom of the table. That win has lifted them above Hearts, which is a good thing for Hibs fans, to look down on Hearts. But they've got Celtic next, so you get the win, and then you're like, far. So they play Celtic at Celtic Park. So key one is against Ross County on the 14th of December. Then they go back to Aberdeen. Then it's Hearts on Boxing Day, which
Yes,
is
tasty.
massive. Like, that is a tasty taste. That game has to be televised. Has to be,
Don't be
for
silly, Andrew.
God's sake. Yeah, exactly. I know. Surely Boxing Day.
How
That is Boxing Day box office.
how much can Laurie Shanklin just not catch a break right now as
Oh
well?
my God,
That
his penalty mess in
Oh, the
Europe.
penalty was awful against Cercle
Yeah.
Bruges on Thursday night. Oh, terrible. I mean, it was
But
nowhere
that's what
near
every striker
target.
just dreams of when you're hitting a barren door. You just like squeeze a penalty, let me score,
Just
and just have
anything.
that feeling, and then you go on an absolute mazy run of goals. But yeah, the boy is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that's
It's just
holding him
football.
back,
Like
or
these things happen, and again, like Shanklin's gone through periods of this. I don't think maybe quite as stark, but you could feel like he could have had any kind of touch on the ball, maybe the last like 18 months or so, and it would have gone into the net. Like he was just in such imperious form. And
Mm.
really kind of since maybe towards the tail end of last season a little bit. Certainly post Christmas, his form wasn't quite as vicious as it had been before, but this season, certainly from kind of like June, sorry, July time, he's just been in an absolutely rank run of form, and it's
Yeah,
obviously disappointing as well. Not just, I mean, it's rubbish if you're a Hearts fan, but if, as a fan of the national team as well, he has been maybe a bit of a bright light where we're just like, well, we've got a goal scoring number nine who gives us something a bit different coming into the national team.
yeah.
He can't. He's saying he can't hit a barn door at the moment. It's just yeah. Just hopefully, again, like it might be one of those things. You just need a goal. You just need one game to kind of turn it a little bit and get your head back in the game. But it's the worst place when you're a player, and
Way, Finn knocked his microphone. Way,
when you're a player in
way.
when you're a player in that zone that you just can't get out of that rut.
I think one thing's for sure, and I know like it's hard for any team to get relegated. The Scottish Premiership suffers when it doesn't have Hearts and Hibs in the top flight. So I
100%.
hope for both of those clubs they go up, and I feel sorry for the team that inevitably would go down in their stead. However, the other game this week, Rangers v Kilmarnock, could be interesting because obviously Derek McInnes has been hotly well, his name has surrounded the Rangers hot seat in the last couple of weeks, if not months. Let's just say, who knows? But Rangers really in Europe are a much different side, Finn, than they are domestically. It's unreal, really. I mean, I know Nice have had a lot of injury problems going into the game last Thursday, but Rangers absolutely annihilated them.
It was just, do you know what? Actually, there was a bit around that I find a bit annoying, if I'm being perfectly honest. The way that was constantly reported as if it was like, well, yeah, I mean, 4-1's a good result, but you know they weren't playing Nice's first team. I'd be like, this is the team that's not lost at home for 6 months, and regardless of the injuries, they still have spent tens and tens of
Mm.
millions of pounds on players. Their reserves or backup players are infinitely better than Rangers would be in that. And this is a poor Rangers team as well. So I did find a bit of the discourse a bit disheartening around that.
Mm.
It's especially like like Rangers got shafted by Liverpool a couple of seasons ago. I don't think the English media or the Liverpool fans for that reason will be like, great result, obviously to beat Rangers 7-1, but you've got to remember that Rangers had an 18-year-old and a defensive midfielder as their centre back pairing that night. They don't care. Like it's just you can
Yeah.
only really beat what's in front of you. So I think yeah, that was a bit disappointing, I've got to say. But it is you've totally hit the nail on the head. Like there's such immense frustration, I think, in the Rangers fan base at the moment between the inability to look like you are as far ahead as you should be on paper of teams that they're playing every week, drawn with Dundee United or I think going into the game against St Johnstone this weekend, most Rangers fans were expecting exactly what we got, which was a turgid, close, poor match.
Mm.
Because it's not the anomaly anymore. This is how this Rangers team has played in the league for the best part of 2 or 3 seasons now. They are poor and they look short of confidence in the league. But when they play in Europe, they look like it's no big thing at all. And I wonder if part of it, as we alluded to earlier slightly in the episode, is players that maybe come from outside of Scotland and struggle. It's a totally different game and tempo in Europe, and Rangers are
Mm.
a team that play better when they're not having to play against the low block, when they are allowed lots of time in the ball because they're not a quick team. So they've got the time to build up. But like Rangers have, I think the goal against St Johnstone this weekend is Rangers' third away goal the whole of this season. And they'd scored 3 goals by half time against Nice alone. So there's some disconnect there that just is completely bizarre. It's kind of summed up. I think there was a brilliant tweet I saw by a Rangers fan, and he says, I'm going to start calling this Rangers team the bin men because we only turn up every second Thursday. And I was like, that seems to be the best way to describe what this team is at the moment.
This tweet was brilliant. It was Gary on Twitter said, Rangers are like that partner that cheats on you every weekend but takes you out for a fancy meal on a Thursday to make up for it.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Love
Hits the
that.
nail on the head. It's
Yeah.
infuriating. And
You're
I mean,
you're the highest ranked British team in the Europa League.
yep, on goal
Brilliant.
difference at the moment. Yeah, we're
All
higher than
matters.
Tottenham. Conceded a last minute draw. But
No
yeah.
excuses, just take it.
And the long awaited return of Aberdeen v Celtic, the biggest talking point of the season. It's happening again. That'll be interesting. Obviously, Aberdeen drew once more, and then Celtic absolutely annihilated Ross County 5-0. So, which team's going to turn up this week? Who knows? Celtic will win that one. So, Scottish Cup first round. I'll just wrap this up, guys, because we're nearing the end of this beautiful podcast. So your time will not be ruined any longer. Fraserburgh, where'd this come from? I enjoyed this because they beat Annan in the League Cup 2-0. But huge shock though, like Fraserburgh, like no way should they be beating Annan. But that's absolutely massive. Interestingly, the other one for me that was really good was Dumbarton beat Alloa in League Cup. And you do wonder, like, is there someone at BBC Scotland that are going to take pity on Dumbarton and just stick their game on telly because they could do with the money?
Only if they draw Celtic or Rangers.
Yeah, probably. Because that's right. Because the draw is on Monday night, so we'll know all of that. But we're recording this on Sunday, but all the Premiership sides go into the draw now. So, could you imagine Fraserburgh get Celtic or Rangers, or Hibs, Hearts, Dundee United, or any of the big teams? Would be absolutely massive.
There was one other result that I think is worth pulling it because it's a little bit of a giant killing, I guess, as well. But Stranraer in the game that we'd already mentioned were beaten after extra time at home by Broxburn Athletic. So that's another lower league team doing it against an SPFL side. And I think that's a pretty good result for them. So they'll be absolutely buzzing to see who they get in the draw as well in the next round.
Is the draw happening at the ground then? Must be. Wonder who they've got. There won't be Rod Stewart again. Wonder if they'll pull out the stops to get someone really interesting. Be like Biffy Clyro's frontman or something like that, or
I feel like Rod Stewart would be a good shout again, though, because I kind of feel like maybe it's just because it's like, you go home for Christmas and your mum and dad like love Rod Stewart, so it always kind of gets whacked on round about Christmas time or something like that. There's something that feels a bit nostalgic and warming and Christmassy about Rod Stewart music on, so he'd be a good guest to get on. But maybe they could branch out a bit and get, I don't know, Michael Bublé to come in and do the draw. That'd be class. He's Christmassy as well.
or Santa Claus.
Or League Cup Santa. That'd be quality.
They should have like always a special guest that's not related to Scottish football. And Santa Claus in December, what an absolute classic that would be. Or an elf.
This podcast has gone on far too long.
I agree. You basically read my words through my head. And it's that classic time for all of you to take solace in the fact that this podcast has finished. So you should stop listening now and then listen to the next one, which is next week. Thanks for listening. Cheers, Laura. Cheers, Finn. I'm away now to go to my bed. Good night.